Hello and welcome to Bald Head Radio. Tonight we're going to have a guest on, guy I've known for a little while, but we haven't seen each other in a long time. But I've always been interested in what DJs do, what they have going on, like what it takes to do the whole thing. It's always been very interesting to me. I was kind of interested in the 80s, and back in the day, if you say back in the 80s, which was 30 years ago, there was a lot of problems matching up BPMs. You had to take the vinyls out, and you had to get your stopwatch out, and just figure out the BPMs of each track and how to mix them up on vinyl. And it was an art, and it's still an art these days, gone digital, and it's a much different scene. So tonight I have Tony Rose. And Tony, are you there?
I'm here.
Yes.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for being here, man. It's cool. I was just reminiscing about back in the 80s when we had, truly two turntables and a microphone. And the process of DJing at that time was everything was on vinyl. Diamond tip needles were the best. You had a basic mixer, and the major thing was finding your BPMs for each track on the vinyl. And usually we used a lot of 12-inch tracks, which were the one song, extended track. There were no 45s. We didn't mess with that shit because it was too much. And they didn't really make 45s at that point in time. That was more of a 60s, 70s kind of thing. What was your method that you remember tracking BPMs?
Well, I remember when I first got started, the guy across the street was doing it and was sort of giving me pointers. And really, sort of back then, the pinnacle of being a good DJ was, getting into beat mixing, being able to mix the beats and match the beats just by adjusting the speed of each turntable. And I found, I forget where I picked it up, some guy at school had one. It was sort of a reference list of every major 12-inch out there with a BPM count. And the way you calculated the BPM is you took a stopwatch or a wristwatch, you counted the beats in 15 seconds, and you multiplied by 4. Not terribly accurate, but, it would get the job done. And I remember he took it from me, and he tore it up, and he said, the guy across the street who was teaching me, and he said, you need to learn it in your head. You need to intuitively understand it. And that sort of set me on a particular path where, the way I did it is I would have different sort of reference points. Like I knew Egyptian Lover, Egypt, was about 125, 130 beats per minute. I knew that something like the Cover Girls Show Me was about 115 to 120. And back then, we didn't really listen to anything, under 100, and I don't remember anything under really 115 beats per minute. There weren't real sort of slow songs that you saw sort of in the late 80s, early 90s with the rise of like New Jack Swing. High energy, old school hip hop sort of just really didn't do that. So really, it was just.
I'm sorry. The range was usually between about 115 at the lowest to maybe 140, 145, and I will never forget Blue Monday with 135. That was like the baseline.
Yes. So, and sort of the way I did it is if you knew you had certain records that, for me, I had certain records that were reference points. And then as I built my record collection, I instinctively would always sort of give them a test run before I'd ever play them live and say, well, what goes with this? Does this song that I know the BPM of go with it? And in my head, I would sort of, sing along to the song and see if it would match, if it sounded too fast or too slow, if I could match it up. And that usually, I found that was fairly accurate. and that you from there you sort of go. But it requires you to store all that information really in your head, which back then was possible because I mean at the most, and I've seen people with amazing record collections. But I think most working DJs would have, if you had 500-600 records, that was a massive, impressive collection. I think probably at the peak, I maybe had 200-250.
And that's what we call our milk crate collection.
Yes, all stored in classic stolen milk crates from behind the the milk store or the liquor store or some restaurant. Oh yeah, no, we used to go on the grocery store.
Yeah, some of the milk crates will have Albertsons blazing on the side, or Stater Brothers, or Rockview was a big one, man. They made the perfect size crates because they made those 4x4 crates and they made the 4x8 crates. Those were perfect.
Yeah. I like the sort of the 4x8 ones because you'd always have your records sort of facing you, going the short way, right? We gave you this little pocket on the side where you could store stuff, the record cleaner, the record brush, headphones, that kind of stuff. So I some people liked just the straight square ones. I never did, but the industrial milk crates, you couldn't beat them because you could drop them, throw them, fall in the back of the truck, and really nothing would damage them.
And they were like made out of that kind of PVC plastics to where, if you would throw them, they would like bend and vibrate but not damage the vinyl. They were like really versatile for just throwing shit in the back of the truck or pulling them out and slapping them down on the ground or wherever you needed them in your setup.
Yeah.
And you knew that your vinyl was safe.
Relative, yes. You knew it was safe. I never lost a record inside a crate, ever. I'm proud to say that.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's a lot of DJs from back in the day that suffered a broken piece of vinyl here and there and went, shit, damn it, I don't have that for tonight because I got a chip in it. Or
I remember.
And also, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, man.
Oh, go ahead. That reminds me of a funny story. There was I did a lot of fraternity parties at when I was at college. It was easy money, and but I remember there was one night I was so proud because I had I'd been out digging, and I had found the Two Live Crew European Ultimix, like this 10-minute of all their raunchiest, all their stuff, all sort of mixed together. So it was the record back then you could put on and then, make out with a girl or run to the bathroom or, go get a drink or whatever.
Yeah, you call the Piss Break album. Or the Piss Break mix, something you can put on and have a good 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my roommate at the time, who was always hanging out helping me, one night I was going to play it. I said, hey, grab it out. So he grabbed it, and he drops it.
No.
And it, usually when you drop a record, it's very rare that it'll land edgewise.
Right.
Usually it'll flip over and it'll land flat.
It'll bounce
landed
around a little
edgewise.
Bit.
Yeah, it'll bounce. It landed edgewise, and there is a perfect little chunk out of it. But
you were probably thinking, hey, there goes my my makeout time over in another room while my shit's playing.
Honestly, I don't remember what I was thinking, but I do, for whatever reason, this was easily decades ago. I won't really date myself. But I kept the record. I still have it, and I don't know why I never got rid of it, because it was still playable. And I remember I used to play it, and the first minute and a half of the intro was just gone, so I would have to sort of cue it up right at the part where the break, the apex of the break, little triangle, and play it from there.
That needle didn't fall off because you chose the right groove, so where the needle didn't fall off.
Yes, so the needle completely missed it. Yes, you're absolutely right. So
when we're talking about those days when it was all vinyl, which it created, you had your decks, and it was the amount of skill that went into doing these things. It was a lot of, people don't realize it's a lot of physical work. You don't have any time to even look up. You don't have time to, you got one vinyl going and you got your BPMs down, and this is all just head calculation. We didn't have computers back then. There were nothing to tell you, what to go next or how to mix it in. It was a skill. It took a master to really get this stuff going, and while you're queuing up, the vinyl on the left in your headphones, and the live audio is going out on the vinyl on the right, you're working on that left one, and you're working that vinyl, spinning it left and right to find the correct spot, the correct beat, and then waiting for that moment to get to just launch it. That was art, and that was work. Now, the way things that are done nowadays, a lot different. I'm not saying it doesn't take art and skill. It does. It still does. But it's computerized now, and I've seen turntables that have no vinyl on them, of course, and that's the way a lot of DJs work. We're talking about, you have your laptop in front of you there, and you've got your mixing board, and you've got your turntables. But those turntables, how are those used? Those digital turntables, how do you use those?
Well, there's nowadays in the digital world, there's sort of three main ways you can go. There is a digital vinyl emulator. So it's real turntables, right? They run to what we call the Serato box or the Tractor box, and that's the digital audio conversion.
Is that a USB out from each turntable?
No, it's a direct line in. It's a direct RCA line into the box. So it takes the analog signal and converts it. And then the software holds all your music, along with the waveform, and and there are waveforms, and the beats have already been analyzed and calculated.
Right.
What the clear plastic the record does, it emits a time code signal that the software then maps the song that you've loaded into the virtual deck on the computer, maps it to that time code, so you can actually manipulate the MP3 file as if it is vinyl, as if it is physically on the tape.
And there's a DJ out on the East Coast called Drew Boogie. He uses that kind of thing, but he does a lot of the scratching and just whoop 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 and between both sides, and he uses that type of equipment, I believe. And how does that work digitally?
It well, like I said, it's mapped to the record. It's mapped to the music file, and all scratching ever was is you just moving. You would back cue and pull the record backward, and usually you do it over a beat or where there was like a hi-hat hit or something to give you that sound, scratch sound. And then really it's a lot the movement of your fingers, how fast you can move them. So it's still the same process. It just is, rather than there being an analog sound, it is just digital, and the software reads it as such, as if it were an analog file. Now there are, that's step one. That's the digital vinyl guys. Then there are the CDJ guys. These are the guys that use the little. They look like little DVD players or VCRs or whatever, and they've got sort of just the little plastic table on the top and the big readout. And those were originally used to manipulate CDs as if it was vinyl. I personally never liked them because it never felt right, and there's no tactile feel. But that's where the dreaded sort of thing.
That's the important thing.
Yeah,
tactile feel.
Well, a lot of old school DJs, going back to what you're talking about, we're talking about the broken record and the grooves of the analog record. you would feel. I mean, that's a unique feeling, and I don't know if this is all DJs, but I've heard from a couple. Our fingertips are now are really sensitive to that because
Mhm.
you're used to, is this, is this a break? Is this the music part? And you can, you know, even now, it's very comforting for me to put my fingers, run it across vinyl, and just feel the grooves. So
You
with
can feel
CDJs,
it.
you don't get that. I
That's the
can
thing
feel
with
them, yeah, and it.
when it comes to vinyl, and that's the ultimate analog. If you have when you're queuing up the left turntable, we'll say,
Mhm.
and it goes back and forth. As you have your fingers on that piece of vinyl, and you have it cued in your headphones, nobody else can hear it. But even if you couldn't hear it, when you move that vinyl back and forth as the needle strikes each side of the groove is a left and right stereo, and the way that needle picks up the sound is with the grooves and pits, much like a digital CD. It's grooves and pits. They use the same idea with that technology, but it's a physical technology. So even if you move that record back and forth, your fingertips can feel that going
Mhm.
back and forth.
Yeah.
You can feel because it's an actual physical hits and outcroppings, I guess you would call it, that hit the needle. You could actually feel that through your fingertips.
Yeah, to some extent you can, especially you can also feel if the needle jumps when you're back queuing. I mean, you can hear it too, but you get a feel for, you know, for that stuff over the. You do it enough, and then you're like my fingertips just don't miss it. So that's why I don't personally care for CDJs. I feel nothing against the CDJ guys; they're all really good, but I just prefer the tactile feel. And the final category are the newest class, and these are the kids with the controllers. They look like little
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, look like little Star Trek Enterprise, consoles with 100 colored lights and a little knobs, and weighs about 10 pounds, and you sort of pick it up and you move it and you put it down. And it's this little sort of self-contained console.
Mhm.
But again, the dials, the cue, I forget what they're called, the controller pads. On some models, they're motorized to sort of simulate
Mhm.
that vinyl feel, with even little vinyl covers over them, so you can get that feel even though it's not the same. So that's
Right.
that. So those are sort of the three. I myself and a bunch of the DJs that I'm really close to have all stuck with digital vinyl, just because and it's fun for us because we still do have, some of us have still a lot of vinyl, and every once in a while, and I don't really take it out much anymore, but every once in a while I will pack a Creative Records, and if I'm playing somewhere, we'll throw a couple of vinyl tracks on just to sort of mix it up. But I'll be the first to admit, doing it digitally, going digital, is extremely convenient.
It's very convenient because it's a matter of transporting equipment and all that kind of stuff. And I mentioned there are some gigs where you could totally get away with doing everything 100% digital, and then there are other gigs where you want to be genuine. We're from the '80s school. We grew up with true DJs, with the guys that were spinning vinyl and stuff like that. And what are the gigs that you choose to go with the equipment that you might have? What you choose to use, a hybrid of vinyl and a little bit of the digital, and you're definitely not going to go with 100% digital because there's just no fun in that. You know what I mean? When you book gigs, how do you look at if it's a wedding, if it's like a party gig, if it's, or your clientele or a specific looking for certain types of music, like how do you, when you go to take a gig and you go and you look at it and say, okay, what do I need to do to gear up for this particular gig? What are the kind of gigs that you like to do, and how do you gear up for that?
Well, ones I like to do. Let's talk about what I don't like to do, and I don't generally do weddings. Yeah, we'll start with
weddings
because
are
that's
the
easier.
worst.
I don't do weddings. I don't do weddings, and it's not. And I love what wedding DJs do, but those guys are probably the only ones making money anymore. They're really good at what they do, but they carry a variety of music, and a lot of what they do, the announcing, sort of, dealing with the bride and the wedding party, takes a backseat to the actual artistry of the mixing, just in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I've done weddings, and it's like, it's hard to, mix or build a consistent set if you're playing, the newest Shania Twain song, and then, Sweet Home Alabama, then AC/DC, then a disco track, and then, and then for the kid who wants some rap song, you tell him, well, look, I'm not going to play, we want some pussy here at this wedding because I don't think the bride will appreciate it. So I've just, over the years, I've done my share, and I've decided, now that I'm sort of back and I'm not doing it for the money, I'm doing it because I love doing it, that I get to be really selective. So that's what I don't do. I also don't like kids' parties. And I don't like parties where people aren't going to dance, because a lot of times people think they want a DJ at their party. Oh, that'll be great. Well, are you actually going to have dancing? Because I'll tell you something. For me personally, if you're, when a DJ's playing and there's nobody dancing or paying attention to the music, we can't handle that. We just can't handle it.
It's being unappreciated.
It's not even a lack of I don't even know if it's unappreciation, because people will come up and say, "Oh, the music was great," but I wasn't expecting to play background music. I mean, I think what DJs get out of it is sort of twofold. One, sharing music that you love with the world. That's one. Two is making people dance. And there's nothing more exciting than starting from nothing, building a floor. And then when, your time is up, if the party's over or whatever, watching that floor disperse and watching people, drenched in sweat. I mean, for me, that's what it's all about. So those are the gigs. So I love doing house parties where there's dancing. I love doing any party where there's dancing. I love playing in clubs. I love doing, like, special events where, people are into the music and dancing sort of breaks out. No one was expecting to dance, but if you're doing it right, people just can't help themselves. And, whether it's in a park or wherever, a little dance floor will sort of form, and people will just, get along and groove. And, and like, oh, and people will come up afterwards, oh, you're taking me back, or what's the name of that track? Oh, I love that remix. You're so good. And, it's really...
Yeah, these are things that make you feel really good about what you're doing. And
because
also
it does.
What happens? Go ahead.
What happens with?
I was going to say, what happens when in a situation like that, as a DJ, there's always some like drunk or even a sober person coming up going, "Can you play this? Yeah, I want to hear that next." And you've got your cue of song, and you've got your role going on. When everything starts going really good, and you got that one person that walks up and goes, "I want to hear this song, and I want to hear it now. Can you do that for me?" Like, how do you deal with that kind of situation?
It depends on the event, and it depends, quite truthfully, on how drunk they are, how much you can get away with. If it's the person cutting the check for the event, then it's like,
play what they want.
Right away. I'll put that on next. This happened to me last week. I was with a friend of mine. We were at the Hilton Anaheim, at the Mixed Lounge Bar in the lobby. And it's a dental convention in town. And my friend had gotten the job and said, you want to come hang out and drop a set? And I'm like, I don't know. Dental convention, how exciting can it be? Completely floored. They're some of the most partying people ever. And it was the kind of night where we got a lot of that, one drunk person after another. And sometimes, sometimes the request makes sense, especially if it fits in sort of the broad outline of your set and where you are right now. Really, the irritating ones for me are when, the person comes up and asks for, drunk or not, a completely different genre from what you're playing. Case in point, some guy came up from Texas, like, we need some Southern rock in here, man. And I just sort of look at him, and I look at a full dance floor. And I'm like, you know what? Sure we do. I don't think so. Oh, come on, man. Everybody will love it. Huh? No, I won't love it, so your theory is already blown. And then another one was, oh, you've got to play some cumbias or corridos or banda right now, some Latin music. But again, I sort of look at the woman making the request. She's completely sober. I look out at the dance floor, and again, packed. And it's like, why would I willingly jeopardize a full dance floor just for your song? Now, some guy came up, I was in the middle of my set, so Aristotle, the DJ I was playing with, said, hey, this guy wants to hear Tayo Cruz Dynamite. And I'm like, not a bad idea, but, I've already got the next song queued. And the guy threw in $20. And I'm like, okay, let me put that on.
Hey, for $20.
And,
fuck it.
For $20. And actually, it turned out to be a really great choice and something that I wouldn't have thought about playing in that particular thing, because it was a little mainstream, and we weren't, we were sort of touching mainstream, but not really going there heavy. But the crowd loved it. The crowd went nuts, and I think it even kicked the energy level up, half a notch, which is good, because, I could build from that. And the guy doubled down and gave me another $20 after I played it. So I walked away with $40, easy money. But that's sort of, dealing with it. I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
No, please. You interrupted
me.
I
was wondering about, like, when you're, as a DJ, you want to feel the crowd and what they react to and what they don't react to. And there's a difference between different gigs. Have you ever done a quinceañera?
Have I done a quinceañera?
Have you DJ'd a quinceañera?
Have I DJ'd? Something in the back of my mind tells me I have at some point, but I don't remember it, which means it probably didn't go that well.
It probably wasn't very good.
It probably didn't go that well, but that's along the same lines as a wedding, where you've got multiple generations, where it really is, you're playing a salsa song, top 40 for the kids, grandma and grandpa want Frank Sinatra, or, and it's just like, some people, some DJs love that. I'm just not one of them, and I really do love. So my favorite gigs are, cool dance parties. I love playing clubs, especially if it's a crowd that's receptive to new stuff. Because the sort of the other thing is, you get crowds that only want to hear what they want to hear.
Yeah, those are the worst.
And if you deviate from that genre, then it's like, you know what, we will immediately stop dancing and we'll walk off. And that's just like, that hurts my feelings. But it's my own fault. You're doing something wrong. So those kind of crowds. But you get a feel early on that if this is what they want, that's fine. I can give them what they want, but it gets and once in a while is fine. But it's when you're doing that week after week where they only want to hear the same 50 songs that you sort of get.
Boring.
It gets boring for the DJ, and like I said, it's about sharing. Yeah. A lot of it's about sharing our love for music and in unique ways. So that part is important to me. Them being open to new music. So.
When you get into a situation to where if you've got a good gig and you got people that understand that this is an open flowing kind of musical situation where you can throw up the things that you want people to hear, that is a DJ's dream. That is where you want to be, to where I want to introduce some music. I want to have fun in what I'm doing, and I want to see that other people are enjoying on the dance floor just the stuff that's going on, stuff they've never heard, stuff that they can like dance to and feel it. That's where you want to be. And I imagine that when you're booking, gigs and stuff, you're limited to, what you can and can't do. To get a gig to where you can put yourself out there with new music or your own mixes or things that you would like to have people respond to in a positive way. The whole thing is any type of entertainment, you want to be acknowledged and you want to feel that other people are receptive to what you're doing. And I got to imagine that in the club scene, you only have so much room to move in. And if you try to go outside of that comfortable zone that your listeners or the club owners or whatever, it's got to be a place where you feel, why am I doing this? Because now I'm doing things for other people. I'm not doing it for me.
Yeah, that's the paradox, is that you are, you do it for you, but you also get paid to do it for other people's enjoyment or to make money for the club owner. And there's certainly been, there's been some gigs where it's like, that's not my specialty, but I can do it. And I'm fortunate just because, I'm in a position now that I'm the age that I am, and I've been doing it since I was 16, that if the gig really doesn't interest me, I just say, you know what, I'm probably not the right person for you, but, let me find somebody who is. And there's also some cases where I've got some friends who are into specific genres of music that, I had only been sort of tangentially exposed to it. But, and I can't say that it's a favorite of mine, but it's been interesting, playing with them and sort of having to learn that genre to the point to where I can actually be competent and play it, And it's something that I've, again, I don't know that I would ever do it exclusively, but it's been fun adding that dimension to my repertoire. And I think that sort of touches on something else where your thing was going. That's probably the biggest difference between, now and back when we were younger, is just sort of the two things that are different. One, the sheer volume of music that is out there. And the low... Yeah, I mean, well, you were a musician. You wrote some songs.
Yeah.
You remember back in when we were kids what it cost to actually record a song? To actually get into a real studio?
It was completely prohibitive. Any ideas
it's
that we had
prohibitive.
were we could not realize.
Yeah, and if you were really industrious, you put some egg crate foam in a closet, and somebody had a 4-track recorder. Right,
I did that.
And you go to the closet.
I did all of that.
Yeah, and you go to the closet, you record it, and now today, even the most basic laptop. I mean, some $200 laptop is capable of recording or editing music in a way that we couldn't even fathom. So now there's all these genres and subgenres of music, and it's, don't get me wrong, it's really cool because people are doing some really amazing things out there with the technology and with their own imagination. But it's almost like there's very few, well, I'm sure you see it on the radio, there's few stations that play a little bit of everything anymore. And there are very few DJs that, play everything. I mean, now it's like, well, I only play dubstep, and I only play trip house, and I only play trap, but, without the rap in it. I only play Chicago house, not London house or acid house. And it's like, okay, that's cool, I guess, but, and you love that genre, but I mean, there's so much more being that limited that they don't understand, and they don't understand even where that music comes from or what it's descended from or what came before it. So
where it came from and what their influences are not even realized as far as, you're completely correct. Like when we were doing the things that we did, we were influenced by some very small, limited market. But what happens when the market is flooded, and this is something that I love talking about, and we don't have a lot of time to get into it, but I'd love to get into it with you on another show, is the flood of availability, and technology has changed things in such a way to where anybody can do anything they want, whether it's good or bad, whether it's shit music or really good stuff that people put a lot of good thought into. There's
Right.
We have an availability to get our stuff out there if we want to, and let the internet be the judge. But the
Yes.
problem is it's so prolific that it's hard to find the good stuff. You got to wade through, the cesspool of bad stuff to find the gems inside the cesspool, and it's actually become more difficult to find good music than it used to be.
Absolutely. And I have a story that, completely highlights that. Back, in the day, if you
Hmm.
were a DJ, a working DJ, with a regular residency somewhere, you were in a record pool. Then every, week or two, every 2 weeks, you'd get 20, maybe 15 new releases, right? And you'd go
Hmm.
through them. You know, most of it was crap. Some of it was really good. You'd put the good stuff, and then you'd sell off the crap stuff, or just throw it in the trash, or give it away.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
so when I went digital, I was looking around, and it's the only way to get new music now. I mean, there's just no other way. Um, I looked around, shopped around for a record pool, and I'd found a couple online, but I really wasn't happy with them. And I found one that I really, really like. It's idjpool.com, run by David Castro out of Chicago, Illinois. And $50 a month, and that's for. But let me tell you what I get for my $50. I get, all new AT. I get the entire AT Top 40. I get the entire Billboard 100, all new releases that have charted. I get every country release, every hip hop release, every club track, most club tracks, plus Latin, plus remixes, and there's a bunch, and then special ones, holiday, other stuff. So, and in a given, it's updated every week. Every week, I download between 5 and 12 gigs of music, 12 gigabytes, and since we're using 320 kilobit files, the file size is about anywhere from 10 to 19 megabytes.
Right.
So I'm looking at anywhere between 1,000, right around 1,000 to 2,000 tracks a week.
What do you do with all of that?
A lot of times when I have to physically make the time, and every couple of weeks I sit through and I give it, I go through it until my ears bleed, and I give each song about a 10-second listen, 5 to 10 seconds, and if it catches me right away, I dump it in another folder for, further listening. There's stuff that I'm searching for that I just pull out, but if I'm going to discover new music, it becomes really hard. And Steve Shriver, who's also with us back in the day.
I remember
if
Steve.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had a lot of discussions about this, that it's just you really have to work hard. It's so much harder, exactly what you were saying, to discover that gem in the pile, because there's so much of it to wade through. And
there's
it's
so
like,
much,
I'm sorry.
There's so much
that
you have to, like I say, you have to walk through that pool of shit to find the good stuff, and that's exactly what you're describing. Is wow, how do I find something that I really, really like, or something that really appeals to me when there's so much out there, and it's a double-edged sword, as they say. There's the ability to get stuff out there, but there's the ability of people that just put out shit, and it just becomes this big, huge pool of, what do I have to wade through to find the good stuff?
It is. It's just really, really hard. And being a digital DJ at times, it's like, what am I supposed to do with 5 terabytes of music? I
Yeah.
can't take it with me. I have enough music now that if I told the software to start at track 1 and play every track one time until it's all done, finish, decades, 100
Yeah.
years from now.
Way too much of your time to try to figure all that out.
Yeah,
But
well,
we got.
I'm sorry.
I mean, there's ways to. Now, I'm not a DJ or anything like that, but I understand that complication, and it's rough. I mean, I haven't gotten any new music in quite some time because it's just too much of it. Too much to
It's
try
hard to
to
find the
try
time
to
to even
hunt down.
to go through it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very rare when I find something new that I like. And I'm always looking for something new, but it seems to be just a rehash of older things that I already heard, or I know that's kind of a thing to say that's a little pompous, but I heard this already.
No.
It's just a remix of something that I've already heard, and maybe the remix I might like of a particular thing. But wow, it gets really rough.
You have no idea how right you are. How a lot of the stuff that I hear is either taking a hook from a 70s or an 80s or a 90s song, or
Yeah.
is just a sophisticated rework of it. And it's like, is that what I've heard? Oh yeah, I know what that is. Well, no wonder I like this, because I already like this song. So there's a lot of that. There is a lot of that, and at the very same time, there are a lot of people doing a lot of original, great things. But
Well,
like I said,
I gotta say, unfortunately, we have maybe less than a minute left to wrap this up. And man, in the future, I'm going to have a show that's going to have more time. So I want to thank you for being on my show.
Worthwhile. No, thank you for having me.
You've been a great guest, and we've had a good look at, what we were talking about, just delving into that DJ culture and what that's like. And there's a lot of different avenues about that I would like to definitely get into in the future. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I do thank you very much, Tony, for being on my show and supporting me. And
thank you for having me.